What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Friday, May 23rd edition of the Ship My Money Show. I'm your host, Adam Scherer. You can follow me on Twitter at ShipMyMoney DFS. 12-game MLB slate tonight. Fortunately, not too much in the way of weather that looks likely to mess things up. We do have some rain around in Game 2 of the Orioles-Red Sox doubleheader, but I am not lucky enough in life to have the Orioles game canceled. Hopefully they could just somehow get rained out for the rest of the season. So it looks right now, at least, like that game probably is going to be good to go. Definitely keep an eye on that one, though. Other than that, everything I think looks pretty good right now from a weather standpoint. So that's always nice on a 12-game slate. Obviously, that can be a pain in the ass, but looks like we don't really have much to deal with there. We do have the Yankees in Coors Field. Ozzy mentioned it in chat. Aaron Judge, $7,000 on DraftKings, still projected to be essentially the highest owned player on the slate, and I really can't even argue with it. So Steven said the O's are making a comeback in the ninth. Great to hear. They actually looked good for the part of the game that Povich was pitching. I was watching and kind of like, okay, like maybe they are kind of starting to figure things out, and then you get to the bullpen and it just ends. But we get them again later with Charlie Morton on the mound making his return to the rotation. So that should be a good time. But going to get into everything, going game by game. Maybe not Charlie Morton. Is it Trevor Rogers? I didn't actually double check that. They announced that Morton was going to pitch today the other day, but I guess we have to keep an eye on that too. Anyway, going to go game by game, hitting on each of these games, talking about what looks good, what doesn't. Certainly no pitching for the Orioles, no matter who it is. So, yeah, going to get into ownership. I have some lineups built right now. They're obviously going to change a lot between now and lock. We're still waiting on a bunch of lineups, waiting on both lineups in that Red Sox-Orioles game, waiting on the Rangers, on the Yankees, which is obviously very important, on the late games in Los Angeles/Anaheim and Sacramento/Oakland. So obviously things are going to change, but I can touch on that as we go through the show as well. Going to use the Run the Sims projections as always. You can get access to those using the link in the description below. These are the projections that those of us at Endgame Syndicate have put out. They are modeled after what goes on in Utical's head. We essentially figured out how to quantify all of that and take the things that he uses and thinks are important and get them into a model. Really happy with how they've looked so far. Always looking to make small improvements as well, but very happy with these so far and excited to use them. It's always nice, especially in a sport like baseball with as much volatility as there is, to have quality projections that are not being used by like half the field, which it feels like, pretty much everybody's using one of like 2 or 3 sets of projections these days. So it is nice to just have a different set that I believe are good and that I know what goes into them and I like what goes into them. And I know that all of my opponents are not using them. So I've been excited about that, have had success so far this year. You can sign up using the link in the description below. And if you are a lower volume, lower stakes player, doesn't make sense for you to pay full price for the fully detailed downloadable projections if you're just making a couple of lineups by hand. We do also have a lower tier option, a less expensive option for you, $10 a month. You can get the projections overlaid directly onto your DraftKings page, onto your lineups page rather, on DraftKings. And so you can use it to hand build lineups that way, use it for late swaps, all of that. So both of those options are available. Link in the description below and use the promo code that you see at the bottom of the screen. UTA MLB gets you 10% off. That is available until May 31st. So getting into this one, Toronto taking on Tampa in Tampa Bay. We have seen this park play favorably for hitters so far this season. The expectation here was that it would be a very wind-driven park. This is true for Tampa Bay and for Sacramento. These minor league stadiums just do not have the same height to their seating that major league stadiums do. So it does make them more wind dependent. I don't think there's anything crazy going on with the wind here, but still a relatively high total in this one. Eric Lauer is on the mound for the Blue Jays. For Tampa Bay, we have Drew Rasmussen. So not getting to either pitcher here. Neither pitcher is getting much ownership either. Rasmussen getting 4% ownership at $8,300. Lauer getting less than 2% at $7K. I have Lauer right now in 2 out of 150 lineups. I don't have Rasmussen in any. I would assume there's a good chance by lock that I don't have either one of these guys in any lineups. I don't really see much of a need to get to either one. Very tough strikeout matchup for Rasmussen. He's the more talented of the two pitchers so far this season. Rasmussen striking out 22% of hitters, 111.8 stuff plus grade, 110.4 pitching plus grade. Like, he's a solid pitcher, but not a great park for pitching in, and a difficult strikeout matchup against this Toronto team. Although we did just see them get carved up by somebody. I don't remember who, but there was somebody against them the other day that got a lot of strikeouts. It might have been Dylan Cease. I think it was Cease, but not a spot on a 12-game slate that I'm really looking to go to Rasmussen. 107 WRC plus for the Blue Jays against right-handed pitching so far this season. That ranks in the middle of the league, but they're ranked 26th in strikeout percentage. On the other side, Tampa Bay against left-handed pitching since the start of last season. Their active roster does rank 7th in strikeout percentage. They have been below average in terms of production as well, ranking 24th in WRC plus. But Eric Lauer, not exactly the type of pitcher that I am going to be looking to get to on a 12-gamer. Offenses here, though, are showing up for me. In particular, actually getting to the Toronto side right now, which is kind of surprising to me. They're not getting much ownership, sub 5% ownership across the board on the Blue Jays. And I mentioned it that, Rasmussen is a solid pitcher. He's not generally somebody that I really like getting to bats against. At the same time, you are getting the Blue Jays in this park at very low ownership. They do have an implied run total between 4 and 5. It's not like it's nothing. And there is power in this lineup, even if they have underperformed a bit this year. Rasmussen, though, he is good at limiting power. 137 expected ISO to lefties this year, 132 to righties. So, again, I'm a little surprised that I'm getting to the Jays as heavily as I am right now. Maybe it's something that does change between now and lock. But at the same time, from at least an upside standpoint, it is a good park for home runs. You do have Vladimir Guerrero at sub 5% ownership, Varsho, Springer, a cheap Addison Barger, Bichette, Kirk. Like, it's when you think about the talent in this lineup compared to the pricing, there is certainly upside. There's not a single hitter in this Blue Jays lineup priced above 5K on DraftKings. So you are at least getting a situation where you can get Vlad Guerrero, Bichette, Springer, Varsho, etc., in a home run friendly park at discounted prices, and you're going to have good pitching, good one-offs, good secondary stacks around them. So if these hitters that are proven good major league hitters actually do damage despite a tough matchup, you're going to have a very, very high ceiling for those lineups. The projection itself isn't going to be great because the matchup isn't great, but I understand the upside argument. I'm, again, just a little surprised that I'm getting as much of them as I am. I will say that it's mostly in stack form. So they're actually right now my highest owned 5-man stack, but I'm not sure that I have them at all outside of 5-mans, which I think does make sense when you think about the matchup, because like on the one hand, it's a good home run park, but you're going to have plenty of spots that you can get, pick off one-off home runs on a 12-game slate. If Rasmussen is on his game, this isn't a good matchup for anybody on Toronto. You're basically saying, yeah, but what if Rasmussen just happens to have like his C stuff today? Pitchers generally are going to have 2 or 3 starts, even if they're good, over the course of a season where they just don't have it. And in that case, it's good, obviously, for everybody on Toronto. And you have a bunch of these guys at relatively inexpensive price tags facing Rasmussen at not his best. And so basically, I think the thought process here is kind of, if Rasmussen is just doing what Rasmussen normally does, I don't want the Blue Jays. If he's not on top of his game, then you would want all the Blue Jays at low ownership. So they are very heavily kind of just like isolated into Blue Jays stacks or not having Blue Jays, which I think, like, theoretically in my head is how I would want to approach this team ideally. On the other side, for Tampa Bay, you do have, I think, a little bit better matchup, or not even a little bit. You do, I think, have a better matchup against Lauer than you do against Rasmussen. Very limited sample in the major leagues over the last couple of seasons for Lauer. He's thrown a total of 116 pitches to righties, 65 to lefties since the start of last season. If you go back to 2023, you get up to a little over 800 pitches to righties, 211 to lefties, 279 expected ISO allowed to righties over that time, 138 to lefties. It looks like a pretty nice spot for Yandy Diaz with first base and third base eligibility. He's getting about 9% ownership. The difference here on Diaz, though, is that his price tag did finally jump on DraftKings. We've kind of just been jamming in, or at least I've been jamming in Yandy Diaz for a couple of weeks because he's just been sitting at like 36, 37, 3,800. Now he's up to $4,600. Yandy Diaz is $300 less expensive than Vladimir Guerrero. I don't mean that in the sense that like there should be a massive gap between them necessarily, but I do mean it in the sense that like he's not clearly underpriced anymore. So I think he's still a solid play here going up against Lauer, but you're not just getting him for free like you have been. And I think that's kind of the case for Tampa Bay in general. Brandon Lau up to 4,400, Junior Caminero up to 4,300. It's still not an expensive stack, but you're not getting the same sort of discounts on the best parts of the stack that you have for a while. And then this is also a team that does come with some pinch hit risk. Now, Josh Lowe is starting, so that mitigates some of the pinch hit risk. When he's coming off the bench, there is more. But you do have Curtis Mead at first base, Jonathan Aranda not in the lineup against the lefty, Aranda probably coming into play first base once you get a right-handed pitcher in there. So there is some pinch hit risk, not as much as there would be if Josh Lowe were out. Danny Jansen as a value catching option is hitting fifth at 2,700. That's a perfectly fine value play. He's actually projected for the most ownership on Tampa Bay right now at 9%. I'm getting to about 5%. So I'm a little under the field in general on Tampa. I am getting over the field on Toronto. I don't feel super strongly about either of those. They're both spots where if they were to just change between now and lock, I wouldn't be surprised. But at the same time, I can pretty easily defend the approach to either one. Next, we have Cleveland taking on Detroit in Detroit. So pretty big park downgrade here for home runs for the Guardians. In Detroit, or for Detroit rather, we have Jackson Jobe. For the Guardians, we have Slade Ciccone, I believe. Haven't had to say that name in a couple of years since he was on the Diamondbacks, but I'm pretty sure it's Ciccone. And it doesn't matter because I'm not going to be playing much of him, I don't think. 7,800, tough matchup with the Tigers. Good offense against right-handed pitching so far this season. Detroit is 12th in strikeout percentage, 5th in WRC+. The only teams that have been more productive against right-handed pitching are the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Diamondbacks, and the Cubs. I don't think people are giving the Tigers that sort of respect yet, but they have been a very, very good offense against right-handed pitching. Jackson Jobe on the other side, highly regarded prospect, former first-round pick, moved quickly through the minor league system. So far this year, strikeouts have – I lost this page. Strikeouts for him so far this season have not really been there, only striking out 18.5% of hitters, 12.7% walk percentage, 4.9 xFIP. Not a great strikeout matchup here against Cleveland either. Their offense does rank 22nd in WRC plus against right-handed pitching, and it is a park downgrade for them, as I mentioned, but they're also only 14th in strikeout percentage. Jobe coming in at 7,400, getting 5% ownership. He's in about 6% of my lineups. If you need a cheap-ish mid-range pitcher and you want to just get to some Jackson Jobe, like it's fine, but he's not somebody I'd be singling out, not somebody I'd be prioritizing here. Offensively, not a great park for hitting home runs, which is just kind of going to temper expectations on a 12-game slate. You have Tampa Bay, you have Fenway Park with Baltimore pitching added on top of it. You have Atlanta, you have Minnesota, which is good for home runs. You have Houston, which can be good for home runs. You have Colorado, obviously. You have Sacramento, you have Angel Stadium. Like there are a lot of very good home run parks on this slate. And so that is something that you have to keep in mind when you talk about Detroit. When you think about park factors and everything, it's not so much that you should just blindly be never be playing hitters in parks where it's tough to hit home runs. Like obviously they still can. You saw it yesterday on the short slate. You had to have Christian Yelich to win because he hit 2 home runs in a park that I honestly didn't even know he could still hit balls out of in PNC. Like it still happens, but when you get a large slate with a lot of hitter-friendly parks, obviously it just becomes less and less likely that the guy that you need is from a game where it's hard to hit home runs compared to one where it's easy to hit home runs. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Whereas if you get like a 5 or 6 game slate or even a bigger slate, but it's somehow every game is in pitcher-friendly parks, then the impact is reduced and it doesn't matter as much. But that's not the case on this slate. And you can see it reflected if I just look at our projections and go to home run projections here. You have to scroll quite a bit to get to anything from Cleveland, Detroit. The highest home run projection is Kerry Carpenter here at 0.22. Had to scroll down to even find him. Then you have to go a bit further to get to anything else. So it just reinforces that this is not the place to be searching for home runs, even though neither of these pitchers have had tons of success, so far in their major league career. Obviously, limited sample for both. Slade Ciccone going back to last season, 202 expected ISO to righties, 185 to lefties. He gives up some power. It's just that this park does help to mitigate it. So far this year, lefties have done damage against Jobe with a 256 expected ISO. Righties, only a 136 expected ISO, albeit with a lower strikeout percentage. Put this game in Cleveland, and I'm actually pretty interested in the bats, but playing in Detroit, it just really limits things. Highest owned player in this game is Angel Martinez at 5%. He's my highest owned player, and he is projected to be the highest owned player. 5% for me, 5% for the field. Jose Ramirez, 4%. I have 3%. It's kind of just, if you want to play some Ramirez, cool, obviously. Same for Kerry Carpenter. Same for Riley Green. Like, they're good. But you can find plenty of good hitters in better spots on this slate. Martinez is getting that ownership because he's only $2,900, batting second. He also has second base and outfield eligibility. So he's just easy to fit into lineups if you need to save salary. So that's why you're seeing, Angel Martinez get the most ownership in a game that does include Kerry Carpenter, Spencer Torkelson, Jose Ramirez, Riley Green, etc. Just the highest point per dollar value here. Colt Keith, also a good point per dollar play, but he's first base, second base instead of second base outfield. So much higher opportunity cost on Colt Keith. Moving on to the Dodgers, taking on the Mets. Dodgers getting out of Dodger Stadium, so it is a park downgrade. It is still an extremely good offense. Griffin Canning going for the Mets at 7,600 in a brutal matchup. Clayton Kershaw going for the Dodgers at 8K. Relatively low projections on both of these guys. We have seen improvement for Griffin Canning so far this season. He's projected for 4% ownership. I'm getting to like 2% right now. He's somebody that I want to, keep an eye on, but it seems like he's been in unfavorable matchups, ones that are difficult to target from a DFS standpoint in like every game so far this year. His strikeout percentage is up from 17% last year to 23% this year. Stuff plus grade is up 7.5 points. Still grading out below average at 93, but not as bad as it used to be. Pitching plus grade is up 5 points. Like, Griffin Canning, I think, has made legitimate improvements. And keep in mind, Griffin Canning is somebody that when he first came up with the Angels was actually a solid pitcher and then just fell off the face of the earth, as people tend to do when they have to play baseball for the Angels. Now you have Canning back to being at least a respectable pitcher, but you have this matchup with the Dodgers on a 12-game slate. Again, 12 gamers just are not the ones where I think you should be looking to get really cute and be like, oh, well, I know this little thing about Griffin Canning that nobody else knows, and it makes him project for 0.2 of a point better. 12-game slate, it just doesn't really matter. So pretty self-explanatory. I think that you don't need to be prioritizing Griffin Canning against the Dodgers. And then you have Kershaw in a tough matchup as well. His second start back from the injured list, just not, even though he is only 8K, not something I think I really need to get to against the Mets. He's only projected for 3% ownership. I'm not getting to him. In his first start back, he went 4 innings. He threw 83 pitches, struggled against the Angels, gave up 5 earned runs, only struck out 2, walked 3. Yeah, I think it's very reasonable to expect there to be some rust here, and you're not getting any sort of matchup discount going up against the Mets. Offensively, neither of these spots are great, but there is certainly a lot of tournament upside just based on the talent level in these two offenses. So I do think that it's a spot where if you want to stack either one at low ownership, go for it. Like, everybody in this game outside of Shohei Ohtani is projected for 10% ownership or less. That being said, right now, it's not the spot that I'm looking for or looking at. Shohei Ohtani would be my highest owned player from this game right now at 8%, followed by Juan Soto at 6%, Lindor at 5%. So I'm pretty much around the field, just getting to these guys at, sub 5%. There's a lot of hitting talent in this game, but there's also just a lot of good offensive spots to target. And Canning so far this season holding righties to a 127 expected ISO. Lefties do have a 203 expected ISO. So again, that points you toward like Shohei Ohtani, Max Muncy, if you want to get to either of those guys. Kershaw, clearly we don't really know what to expect from him. Going back to 2023, which is what you have to do to get any sort of decent sample size. 156 expected ISO to righties, 170 to lefties. But again, very reasonable to expect some rust here. I do think treating the Mets kind of like I was talking about with the Blue Jays makes a lot of sense. If you did want to get some Mets exposure, I think that obviously if you want to just throw Francisco Lindor into a lineup or Juan Soto into a lineup, that's fine. But just thinking about it from like a theoretical standpoint, I do think it would make some sense to just sort of isolate them the way I was talking about with Toronto, because if you get Clayton Kershaw at any sort of normal, even, late career normal Clayton Kershaw, you just are going to want one of the other 23 teams on the slate. But if you get Clayton Kershaw that just faced the Angels in his first start and pitched like shit, and has a ton of volatility and could just not be good anymore, time does catch up with everybody, then you would just want like all the Mets at low ownership. So I do think you could take that approach. Again, it's not one that I'm taking, but at least right now, but you could certainly make that argument. Next, we have the Orioles taking on the Red Sox. So again, waiting for lineups here. Trevor Rogers is the listed pitcher where I'm looking. Charlie Morton, when I ran projections at least, I think is who we had. The Orioles had said earlier in the week he was pitching. Wrong. We might have this. Oh, no, I clicked the wrong one. Where? Okay, so we have, or had at least. Let me refresh and see if this has been fixed. It might not get updated until we get a confirmed lineup. Looks like the doubleheader is throwing something off. Yeah, in our projection. So we have Povich. He pitched game 1. Giolito is the starter for game 2 for the Red Sox. But we accidentally have Povich in. So that'll obviously change before lock. If you're using our projections, you don't need to worry about it. But Trevor Rogers is up as the 27th man for the doubleheader. Probably will start the second game, was the report earlier today from Orioles beat writer. Don't know. They've been using Charlie Morton as a bulk reliever. They had said he was moving back into the starting lineup in game 1. Or not in game 1, today, prior to the whole doubleheader thing. So I don't know. We have to wait for an Orioles lineup here. Whoever's pitching for the Orioles is not good. It's either Trevor Rogers or it's Charlie Morton, I think. So not going to be looking to roster them against the Red Sox. Giolito is getting in a lot of my lineups right now. He's only projected for 11% ownership at $6,500. The Orioles have actually been good against right-handed pitching this year. I've said it a bunch of times, but 6,500, I think, is too cheap on Giolito. He has only thrown 20 innings this year. He has been garbage. 89 stuff plus grade, 19% strikeout percentage, 94 pitching plus. But he is 6,500 on a slate where you do have the Yankees playing in Coors Field. I'm getting a lot of Giolito right now as a value option. Maybe it comes down, maybe it doesn't. Like, he's in half my lineups, which is obviously an uncomfortable amount when he hasn't pitched well, and he does have a tough matchup, albeit we could get a watered-down Orioles lineup as well. Adley Rutschman caught game 1. That means Maverick Hanley should be the catcher in game 2. Rutschman may or may not even be in the lineup. So, and there's always the potential they give other guys the second game off as well. They ran out a relatively normal lineup in game 1. So you might get a watered-down Orioles lineup, which would obviously make Giolito look even better. But I do think this is a very volatile spot. So I do like that he's only projected for around 11% ownership right now, because clearly Lucas Giolito can just be one of the best pitching plays at 6,500. Also, he could clearly go negative, especially in this park. But Orioles lineup's going to drive some stuff here. And then also, there's just a lot of volatility on Giolito. But if you do pay down for SP2, you're able to get more Aaron Judge in your lineups. You're able to get, stronger stacks, obviously, all of that. So, if I do get to Giolito at 6,500, I do think he's underpriced, even with his struggles through his first couple of starts. Those matchups were against the Blue Jays, the Rangers, the Royals, and the Braves. 2 good starts, 2 bad starts. So it's not like he hasn't shown the ability to do well at all. He actually struck out 7 Blue Jays in 6 innings, gave up 3 runs. He struck out 5 Royals in 6 2/3, gave up no earned runs. And then he got torched by Atlanta for 6 earned in 4 innings and by Texas for 6 earned in 3 2/3. So to my point about volatility, he has gone negative twice and he has scored at least 17 DraftKings points twice. 2 of those outcomes are very bad. 2 of them are good at 6,500. Steven said he had 1 good start. He's had 2, really. Like, he scored 17 DraftKings points against the Blue Jays. He gave up 3 earned runs, but he struck out 7 and then had the really good start against Kansas City. Somehow, actually, his 2 best starts have been against the 2 most difficult strikeout matchups that he's had. So just speaks again to the point that I was making about volatility. If you were getting, if ownership projections by lock are like 30% to Lucas Giolito, you probably look at the volatility and say, like, yeah, I'm good. I'll play some Orioles and find some other stuff to do a pitcher. But if only 10 to 15% of the field is going to roster the guy, I'll take the upside he gives me at 6,500 and just hope he doesn't go negative. Don't care who's pitching for the Orioles. Again, don't think you're going to get there. Steven mentioned it in chat. I was going to mention it as well. We don't have the lineup, but there will be no Alex Bregman for the Red Sox, which does weaken their lineup and their stack overall. He took himself out of game 1 after straining his quad. So I think it's pretty much, if it's not 100%, it's like 99.99999 that he's not playing game 2. He doubled, but couldn't get to second base, went back to first base, took himself out of the game. So not going to be in the lineup, but the Red Sox lineup is still going to be in a good spot. That being said, they're not getting much ownership, and I'm not getting to them right now. But again, things will change. And for me specifically, the Red Sox projections I used are, I guess, projected to be against Cade Povich and not whichever of the garbage guys Baltimore is using. So Red Sox projections will go up as well once we get that confirmed lineup. To dig into the matchup at least a little bit deeper, if it's Charlie Morton, Morton has actually pitched well recently as the bulk reliever. He's gotten back to like being a competent pitcher. The stuff has been there for him this year in terms of like he's still throwing relatively hard. He still has his curveball. His command's been bad, and he's just kind of like made mistake pitches at inopportune times and gotten lit up on those. So like from a who would I prefer the Red Sox face standpoint, I'd rather them face Trevor Rogers than Morton, but certainly neither of them are the caliber of pitcher where I am like, oh, this is a bad matchup. I don't want the Red Sox at low ownership in Fenway. If you want to play them, fine against either guy, but we will have to wait to see exactly who the starter is. Also, if they do some sort of bulk thing, obviously it does make the matchup a little bit worse. Like if they, I don't know, announce that like Charlie Morton's going to start and pitch 2 innings, and then they're going to Rogers or something. You do get that like kind of bullpen game effect where it's not ideal, but it's still at bats against Trevor Rogers and Charlie Morton and a shitty bullpen. So who cares? Yeah, high upside spot for the Red Sox, and kind of surprised they're not getting more ownership. Like I'm not super surprised that they're not in my lineups right now since they're projected to face Povich, and he's certainly better than Morton or Rogers. But I'm a little surprised they're not projected for more ownership in general. Duran is relatively expensive at 5,200. So is Devers at 5,300. But other than that, pretty fairly priced team. Relatively inexpensive stack overall. So my brain likes them more than my process does, at least at the moment. I certainly think they're a high upside stack. For the Orioles, there is upside for them too. I'm not getting there. They are getting a little bit more ownership than the Red Sox are. They are still very fairly priced. If we look at point per dollar projections on Baltimore, Laureano looking good. Mountcastle, even though he's been garbage this year. Jackson Holiday, who should be leading off once again, assuming they don't give him the second game off. So Gunnar Henderson leading the way at 9% ownership at 4,700. Laureano has been day to day, may or may not be in the lineup. If he is in, he has actually been solid this year, and he is only 3,300. He would probably be hitting in the middle of the order, getting about 7% ownership. Jackson Holiday leading off at 3,900 has been legitimately good. Over a 120, or right around the 120 WRC plus this year. He is still relatively inexpensive. Rutschman may or may not be in the lineup. So we don't know who's playing for the Orioles. We don't know how bad this lineup potentially can be against Giolito. One way or the other, you have a very volatile pitcher in Giolito. You have a good park for offense in Fenway. You have reasonable pricing on the Orioles. If you want to go there, cool. They don't look like a priority for me or the field, but obviously they are. They're definitely in that bucket of teams where they're not going to get much ownership because it's a 12-game slate. They're going to be like 5 to like 8% owned across the board. And if they're the tournament winning team, nobody's going to look and go, oh shit, I didn't know the Orioles could do that. I've mentioned it a bunch on shows recently, but you have to keep in mind that as bad as this team is, 17-33 now, I think, or 16-33, they still, against right-handed pitching this year, have the 7th, they're tied for 6th in WRC plus with St. Louis. The only teams that have been more productive against right-handed pitching than the 16-33 Orioles are the Yankees, Dodgers, Diamondbacks, Cubs, and Tigers. That's it. They've been more productive than the Mets. They've been more productive than the Mariners. They've been more productive than the Padres, the Braves, the Red Sox. Like it's the Phillies. It makes no sense. I mean, it does because they can't pitch for shit. But it's a high upside offense, assuming they have some semblance of their normal lineup in there. San Diego taking on Atlanta in Atlanta, back to actually having lineups here. Chris Sale is going for the Braves at $9,400. Nick Pivetta on the other side is more expensive at $10,300. Tough strikeout matchup for Sale going against the Padres, but still does look like one of the bigger pitching priorities on the slate. Overall, we have him with, I think, the highest projection on the slate, just edging out Zach Wheeler. They're neck and neck, but Sale is $1,600 less expensive. The strikeout matchup, like I said, is tough, but Sale still a good pitcher. We've seen him strike out 30% of hitters so far this year. Pitching plus grade is down about 8 points. Stuff plus is up 3.5 points. So Stuff still grading out well. Command hasn't been great for him overall this season, but strikeouts have still been there. He's getting 31% ownership. He's in like 48% of the lineups I built before the show. I would expect to be in, a similar spot. I do think that I'm just going to get to a lot of Sale here. Pivetta on the other side, dangerous matchup against the Braves, like 4.5 implied run total for Atlanta. He has been good this year, but I think it's tough to want to pay the elevated $10,300 salary in this spot on a slate where you do have offenses to get to. He has struck out 28% of hitters, has a very good 107.5 pitching plus grade. His stuff plus grade is down to 96.1, but looks like the command has been good for him. Tough matchup, though, against the Braves in this park at this price tag. Atlanta, hasn't been great overall this season. They got off to a very slow start. 108 WRC plus overall, ranks 13th against right-handed pitching. They rank 19th in strikeout percentage, but this is also a team that I assume is going to finish the year higher than 13th in WRC plus against right-handed pitching. They just got off to that slow start, so not super interested in getting to Pivetta here. The case for him would be large field tournaments where maybe you are going to popular stacks, you're going to the Yankees and Coors, and somehow still also have the money for Pivetta. I don't really know how that works, but doing something like that and you just want like 2% owned Pivetta's upside, like sure, but there's plenty of other routes that I would rather take. Offensively here, tough matchup for both offenses. You do have Ronald Acuna back for the Braves, so that clearly increases their upside as well. He is getting 5% ownership at 5,500. He's in like 6% of my lineups. The highest owned guy for me in this game is Austin Riley in 7% of my lineups. Highest owned guy for the field is Acuna at about 5%. So this is just another one that I think you throw in that same bucket with like the Mets. And yeah, I think it's most comparable to me to the Mets and Dodgers game where it's just not a spot where I love getting to either team. I think they have very difficult matchups, but clearly if a team that has Matt Olson and Austin Riley and Ronald Acuna and Marcelo Ozuna hits 6 home runs and wins the slate, you're not going to be shocked. And the same goes for a team that has Jackson Merrill and Fernando Tatis and Manny Machado. But the matchup's certainly less than ideal. And there's other spots that I will be prioritizing instead. Texas taking on the White Sox in Chicago. Sean Burke for the White Sox. Tyler Mahle going for the Rangers. And this is a spot where there is a pitcher getting some ownership that I'm not getting to right now and doesn't feel great, but I am fine with it. Tyler Mahle, $9,600 price tag. Projected for, I looked at the wrong column. Projected for 5% ownership. I'm not getting to that either, but I looked at his projection column and thought he was getting 15. It's obviously a good matchup for Tyler Mahle. The problem is that he is fully priced for the matchup with the White Sox at $9,600. This is a pitcher that has struck out 18.8% of the hitters he has faced this year, below average stuff grade, above average pitching plus grade. So the command has been graded out well for Mahle. Probably going to have a good start. Not somebody that I need to prioritize at $9,600 on this particular slate with a bunch of other pitching. Sean Burke, only 5,500 going up against a watered-down Texas team that does not have Corey Seager. That is a big issue for their lineup. So he's getting about 7.5% ownership. I'm getting to him about 7.5% of the time. This Rangers lineup is not good. You have, Jake Berger hitting 5th. He's been good since coming back from the minors, but is what it is. Jack Peterson is just living on name value at this point. Adolis Garcia and Marcus Semien are batting 8th and 9th. Neither of them have been good this year, but it seems like quite a overreaction to bat Adolis Garcia 8th and Marcus Semien 9th when you're going to bat Sam Haggerty 1st, Jake Berger 5th, and Jock Peterson 6th. But I don't manage major league teams. Either way, I certainly, from like a Sean Burke standpoint, would rather him face those guys more often than Garcia and Semien, regardless of what Garcia and Semien have done so far this year. So from a value standpoint, Burke makes some sense. Obviously, he's going to open things up for you in Coors. I probably would have a little bit more of him if I were to start getting to a little bit less Giolito. I doubt that I have too many lineups where I need Giolito plus Burke. But yeah, like Steven said, Burke's not a terrible alternative to Giolito. Like the floor is -20 for both of them. The ceiling is probably pretty similar for them as well. You're not going to have much confidence going to either one, but I do think that you can just pretty clearly say that they are both underpriced in the sense that they are starting pitchers at very cheap price tags. Burke this year only striking out 14% of hitters, below average stuff plus, below average pitching plus. All of that is also true for Giolito so far, but we do at least have that track record of Giolito being a quality major league pitcher, even though he has dropped off over the years, whereas, Burke is not. So if you need to pay down, fine, but certainly not something you're going to feel good about or that is going to, truly be a priority. Offensively, starting on the Texas side, Getting to them, which is not really surprising because they are cheap given the fact that they absolutely suck. I probably will have a bit less of them once I rerun lineups because did not have Texas lineups when I built these. So we had, Garcia and Semien projected to not be batting 8th and 9th. We didn't know Texas was going to just completely lose their mind. So I was getting to about 19% Jock Peterson at 2,400. This is still, again, like if you just wanted to say, I'm not playing Jock Peterson, that's never my approach, but it would be hard for me to completely argue against it given how bad he's been so far this season. But at the same time, it's still Jock Peterson. He has a track record of being good, and he is 2,400. So it's not like you're paying anywhere close to a normal Jock Peterson price, but he's not one of these guys that you look at and you're like, oh yeah, it's right around the corner. 300 expected WOBA against right-handed pitching this year, 149 expected ISO. Like even looking at his expected numbers, he has played basically to this price tag. There's plenty of guys that get priced down and you jump on it because the expected numbers are good. That's not Jock Peterson, but he is still really cheap. Wyatt Langford, power, speed, upside, getting about 13% of him. I'm getting to Semien and Garcia right now, but again, that probably drops off once you move them from hitting in the middle of the order to hitting at the bottom of it. Josh Smith hitting near the top of the order at 4,500. Josh Young, 3,600, I think looks fine. He's actually getting the most ownership on the team at 9%. So Texas looks like a pretty good stack, but I do think they kind of lose a little bit of intrigue because also the way that it's laid out makes it more difficult to stack because you can't play on DraftKings the 5 and 6 hitter together now because Berger and Peterson are both first basemen. And then also Josh Smith is first base shortstop. So obviously you can play Smith at shortstop and then play one of Peterson and Berger, but just a weird first base positional situation with Texas makes stacking a little bit more difficult. But yeah, if you get to him, fine. Burke hasn't been good so far this year. Looking at what he has struggled with specifically, limited sample still, of course, but a 215 expected ISO to lefties, 308 to righties. So he has struggled with hitters. It doesn't really matter too much who they are, which side of the plate they've been from. It's going to be a good matchup for them. On the White Sox side, not a good matchup against Molly. I don't really like him in DFS because of the salary, and I don't think he's a good pitcher, but I don't think he's a bad enough pitcher that I'd be looking to the White Sox. Andrew Vaughn got sent down to AAA this year, which I think he fully earned, but it does take one of the few guys on the White Sox that you can squint and be like, well, I know he has power in there somewhere. There's upside that maybe he can somehow harness into tonight. Takes one of those guys out of the lineup. So now you're down to Luis Robert and Miguel Vargas and I guess Benintendi sort of, Benintendi batting cleanup in year 2025. So yeah, I'm not getting to the White Sox on this slate outside of very, very small amounts. Seattle taking on Houston in Houston, another game with two teams that have team totals right in the 4.5 range. For the Mariners, Emerson Hancock. For the Astros, Ryan Gusto. When I flipped over to the game, I was thinking, well, it's the Mariners, so there's a good pitcher. I forgot that because of injuries, they still have to use Emerson Hancock right now. 8% projected ownership coming into Gusto at 6,200, 5% coming into Hancock at 5,800. These are two guys, again, that if you're going to play less Giolito than me, which is certainly not a bad idea, you probably mix in if you're playing a lot of lineups, 5 to 10% of both of them. If you're playing 150 max, certainly not a bad idea. If you're playing one lineup or three lineups or something, I think you can pretty quickly not care about Ryan Gusto or Emerson Hancock. Neither of them are great pitchers, great DFS pitchers. Gusto has been the better of the two. 22.5% strikeout percentage this year, 4.04 xFIP. He has been unlucky in terms of ERA versus underlying metrics. 6.33 ERA is driving down the salary a bit to 6,200, 3.97 FIP, 4.04 xFIP, 22.5% strikeout percentage. I don't think he's bad. He is probably underpriced at 6,200. Really, I guess I wouldn't mind turning some of my Giolito into him, but we do have a higher projection by quite a bit on Giolito. Hancock on the other side is not a strikeout guy, never has been. I don't really know how this guy got drafted near the top of the first round. 15% strikeout percentage, 4.88 xFIP, 1.82 home runs allowed per 9 innings. So again, if you're going to one, if I have to pick one out, it would be Ryan Gusto. I think he's the better of the two pitchers in terms of talent. I don't think it's particularly close. 23.7% K percentage against righties with only a 140 expected ISO for Gusto. so far this season. Lefties have given him more problems. He has allowed a 257 expected ISO with only a 20% strikeout percentage. You do have 4 lefties in the top 6 and 6 lefties in the lineup overall for Seattle. 6. Crawford, Polanco, Raleigh, all in the top 4. Tellez hitting 6. Taveras hitting 7. Mastroboni hitting 8. Julio Rodriguez is back in the lineup after being scratched yesterday as well. So certainly not an easy spot for Gusto. On the other side, Astros have, at least prior to yesterday, been underperforming this year. Altuve had been bad, hits 2 home runs yesterday. Not a great matchup, not a terrible matchup, but Hancock, not a particularly good pitcher. Offensively here, on the Seattle side, I am getting to them a bit, particularly Julio Rodriguez and Cal Raleigh. They're just not projected for any ownership right now, which I think is a little bit low. Again, Gusto is not terrible. He has given up a lot more power to lefties, so I do like Cal Raleigh quite a bit. He is 5,300, so that's tough to pay, but you're getting him outside of Seattle, which is always nice. He does have a lot of power, one of the best hitting catchers in baseball, and does have the platoon advantage here against Gusto as well. Rodriguez doesn't have the platoon advantage, but again, you're getting him outside of Seattle. He is only 5K, which is relatively low for somebody that has the power and stolen base upside that Rodriguez has. Then my exposures drop off a bit to everybody else in the 5% or less range. But Rodriguez and Raleigh look like the guys I'm singling out from Seattle right now. From Houston, getting about 9% Altuve. He's getting 8% ownership. He is only 3,700, second base and outfield eligible. So from a value standpoint, he's just going to look pretty good in a good matchup. Still have to scroll down a little bit to find him, but there's a lot of quality value bats, just a really cheap game in general. Yainer Diaz hasn't been very good this year, but does have a track record of having some power at catcher. He's getting 5% ownership. I'm right around that at 3,400 batting cleanup. Jeremy Pena right around the field at 6%, $3,900 price tag leading off. Isaac Paredes getting 5%, Christian Walker getting 5%. Houston, just another team that, because of the value component, is just kind of getting 5% across the board, and that's pretty much how I view them as well. Looking at Hancock's splits so far this season, 175 expected ISO to righties, 247 to lefties. Going back to last year, 221 to righties, 175 to lefties. I think you can kind of just take a step back and say he's not a particularly good pitcher. He's certainly not dominant against either side of the plate. And you can kind of just look to whoever the best hitting players on the Astros are, which would be Altuve, Diaz, Pena, Paredes, Walker. Kansas City taking on the Twins in Minnesota. Park upgrade for the Royals in terms of home runs, not in terms of scoring runs, but we know that those are two very different things from a DFS standpoint. Pablo Lopez going for Minnesota at 9,900. Noah Cameron going for Kansas City at 8,500. 12.5% projected ownership coming into Pablo Lopez. I'm only getting to about 4% at 9,900. It is not a great strikeout matchup against the Royals. It is a little bit better than it would be if they were at home. But overall, they do have the lowest strikeout percentage against right-handed pitching this year, only 17.2%. Even if you increase that a bit for them being on the road, it's certainly not going to project as an above average strikeout matchup. Lopez is good, but you are paying full price for him as well at 9,900, 27.7% K percentage this year. Not backed up by Stuff Plus, but it is backed up by Pitching Plus. 111.7 grades out very, very well in that metric. That's up 5.5 points from last year for him. So again, I think a very good pitcher. Just not prioritizing him at 9,900. I think that getting 5-10% is perfectly fine. Fields at about 12%. Not a bad play, just one that I'm not really getting to because I'm just getting the more Chris Sale. We have him projected higher for less. Also, maybe if I start getting less Giolito, it does give me a little bit more Pablo Lopez. Obviously, a different roster construction in that case, though, because if I'm getting to Lopez, I'm not able to get to the same sort of bats as I am when I go to Giolito or Gusto or Hancock or Burke or whoever in that range. Noah Cameron, 8,500, tough price tag for him. 3% projected ownership. I'm not getting to him. So far this season in his rookie year, Cameron has, in a limited sample, struck out 13% of hitters, 5.03 xFIP. Just not somebody I need to pay $8,500 for. Doesn't project to be that bad, but just kind of looks to be like a guy probably going forward. So not somebody I think I need to get to on this slate. For the offenses, I'm not getting much of anything. The field's not getting much of anything. My highest owned bats in the game would be Jonah Bride for value at 2,300, batting 7th. He's in 4% of my lineups right now. Bobby Witt is in 4% of my lineups right now. For the field, Royce Lewis projected for 6% ownership. He is batting second at $3,200. From a talent standpoint, that is a ridiculously cheap price for Royce Lewis. He has not been good so far this season, but certainly if you want to just kind of buy in low and say eventually this dude is going to hit because we have a track record of him being a very good hitter in the majors, that's fine. He's batting second. He's 3,200. Ryan Jeffers leading off 3,700 with the platoon advantage. Carlos Correa back in the lineup at 3,400 batting cleanup. Minnesota is cheap. They do give you upside. They are cheap. If they're another one of these teams like Houston, like I think a lot of teams on this slate that just have a 4.5, give or take, implied run total. They are sub 4K on most of their hitters. They do have talent. If they're the one you want to pick out, cool. They're not really different than all these other teams, so it's tough to like really prioritize them, but perfectly fine spot to be looking to Minnesota for some value against a middle of the road pitcher in Cameron. Arizona taking on the Cards in St. Louis. Zach Gallen on the mound for the Diamondbacks. Miles Mikolas in a brutal matchup for the Cardinals. Not a good park for home runs. That's the only negative thing to say here. But starting with the pitching, Zach Gallen, $8,800 price tag, getting 5% ownership. I'm in that ballpark, a little bit less right now, but I'd expect to be, around 5%, give or take. 24% strikeout percentage this year. 91.8 stuff plus grade. I will mention for Gallen, that's not alarming. He was 91.5 last year. His stuff just doesn't grade out that well in that metric. It is a metric, like I think it's a quality metric. I like looking at it, especially early on in the season. But I like looking at it, in conjunction with strikeout percentage and pitching plus. But it does have biases against certain pitches, particularly changeups and splitters. Generally don't grade out all that well in stuff plus. So you do, when you have the ability, want to compare a pitcher to themselves. 91.8 is below average, but Zach Gallen has been an above average pitcher for his career and a below average stuff plus guy. So you don't actually have a year to year drop off for Gallen there. His strikeout percentage is pretty close to last season. His pitching plus grade is almost identical to last season. So basically, I think you have a pretty good pitcher in Gallen. Does have a tough matchup. The Cardinals actually, like I said a minute ago, rank 6th, tied with Baltimore in WRC plus against right-handed pitching this year. They also rank 29th in strikeout percentage. So that kind of makes Gallen look okay at low ownership, but not like any sort of a priority. Certainly not interested in much, if any, Miles Mikolas here. Arizona ranks 18th in K percentage against right-handed pitching. They rank 3rd in WRC plus. Miles Mikolas is just not a particularly good pitcher. So far this season, he's only struck out 14% of hitters. His stuff plus grade is down 5 points from last year. His pitching plus grade is down 4 points from last year. He's been like 2/3 of a standard deviation worse than league average in getting strikeouts, infield fly balls, and ground outs, the 3 most favorable outcomes that you can get from an at-bat. He's been below average at that. Just not a very good pitcher in a brutal matchup. The Diamondbacks are in a tough park for offense. Like I said, that's the only thing really working against them. They are low owned, which, again, not really surprising on a 12-game slate. They're just a 5% owned team. Corbin Carroll, Ketel Marte, Suarez hit the hell out of the ball this year. Any of these guys look good if you can get to them. I do still like the $4,200 price tag on Suarez. I'm really surprised that has not moved given the start that he's had to this season. So far, Mikolas has struggled much more with lefties than righties. 230 expected ISO to lefties, only 152 to righties. If you go back to last year, pretty similar stuff. 202 expected ISO to lefties, 166 to righties. So he will give up some production to righties, but certainly if you have to choose, you would prefer left-handed bats, which points you toward Corbin Carroll, Ketel Marte as probably your 2 best options. Josh Naylor, 4,300, has power as well, but it's loaded first base position compared to second base for Marte, or at least having 3 outfield spots, 4 on FanDuel for Corbin Carroll. But just add the Diamondbacks to the list of very high upside offenses, but not in the best home run park. But I do think they are a pretty interesting tournament stack, just given the amount of talent they have, the favorable matchup against Mikolas, and the lack of ownership. For the Cardinals bullpen, they do have 3 left-handed relievers, so that is a little bit of a negative for Carroll and Naylor, Alec Thomas as well. For Cards bats, I don't think I'd really have much interest there against Gallen. Just, again, not a good park for hitting, particularly for hitting home runs. Not a great matchup against Gallen. has allowed a 181 expected ISO to lefties so far this year, 216 to righties. Strikeout percentage to lefties is about 7 to 8 points lower than against righties. So it's, if you wanted to look at those numbers and say, like, I want some Lars Nootbaar or I want some Brendan Donovan, like, okay, but it's just really hard for me to pay $4,800 for Nootbaar, $4,600 for Donovan in St. Louis against Gallen when you have, points at like 12 other or 10 other games that you could get to. Yankees taking on the Rockies in Colorado, somewhere close to like an 8 team total for the Yankees. The Rockies are just such a bad team. Like they don't have good starting pitchers to throw out at you. And then they have a bad bullpen following it up. So you get add-on runs as well. You're just seeing like the highest, at least from memory, team totals like ever. 4 teams facing the Rockies in Coors right now. Currently for the Yankees, the team total the line is 7.5. Over is plus 101. It's just an insane spot again. And we saw this for the Phillies in that series. It doesn't always come through, obviously. But the Phillies also showed the reason why these team totals get so high. The Phillies actually didn't really do that well in a couple of those games, but then they still, I think it was game 1. If you didn't play the Phillies, you were feeling really good in tournaments, and then they just scored 9 or 10 runs because the starter, who miraculously, I think it was Freeland, was pitching well, leaves the game, and the bullpen just shits the bed and gives up like 6 runs. So it's just, you're dodging so much because nobody that's going to throw a baseball for the Rockies tonight is a good pitcher. And the Yankees obviously are extremely good offensively. So the Yankees look great. They're my highest owned stack overall. I assume they're going to be most people's highest owned stack. But getting back to the pitching for a second, I am obviously not interested in Tanner Gordon. Clark Schmidt, though, is getting 15% ownership. He's only 7,200. I'm getting to 19%. I do think he's a solid mid-range play here because in addition to not being able to throw baseballs, the Rockies cannot hit baseballs. This is the worst team, arguably, to ever play baseball. It is the worst 50-game start, I think, ever since like 1895, I saw. So you don't want pitchers in Coors, but if you're going to make Clark Schmidt $7,200 because he's playing in Coors, you're not accounting for the fact that he's facing a minor league baseball team in Coors. Part of the reason Coors is bad to pitch in is that while the Rockies are basically never a good major league baseball team because they can never pitch, they usually at least have guys that can hit. Like, this team is unbelievably bad. I don't have it in front of me right now, but I mentioned it the other day. If you just look at home splits this season, the Rockies have like the 3rd highest strikeout percentage in baseball, not accounting for the fact that it's really hard to strike out in Colorado because pitches don't move as much. They are just bad no matter where they're playing. It's horrible. Overall this year, against right-handed pitching, they rank dead last with a 76 WRC plus. In strikeout percentage, they rank 2nd, again, despite playing half their games in one of the most difficult parks to strike out. They rank 2nd with a 25% strikeout percentage. Clark Schmidt's strikeout percentage so far this year is down a few points from last year to 22%, which for this matchup is still fine anyway. But the other thing that I want to mention with that is his matchups so far have been like laughably difficult. Kansas City, Cleveland, Toronto, San Diego, Seattle, and the Mets have been his 6 starts so far this season. If you look at what those teams have done against right-handed pitching in terms of strikeout percentage, Kansas City, dead last, San Diego, 28th, Cleveland, 14th. 14th. Mets are 21st. I think I said Toronto. Yeah, Toronto is 26th. And then the other one that I mentioned was Seattle. They are 9th. But they actually started out the year much lower. He faced them 2 starts ago, though. He struck out 6. So, he's actually been, within context, he's actually been solid. 7 strikeouts against Cleveland, 6 against Toronto, 6 against Seattle, 5 against the Mets. This is his first above-average strikeout matchup. So I think that you always want to keep that in mind when you look and you're like, oh, well, Clark Schmidt struck out 26% of hitters last year. He's only struck out 22 this year. His stuff plus grade is down like 7 to 8 points, which is concerning. His pitching plus grade is only down like 1. But when you're just looking at strikeout percentage, you do want to keep in mind that it is possible to just run through a gauntlet of tough strikeout matchups, and that's what Schmidt has done so far. So I do think he's underpriced here at 7,200. I do like him about as much as you can like a pitcher in Coors Field, or at least a non-ace pitcher in Coors Field. Now, offensively, I don't really feel the need to get into this too much. Whatever Yankees you get to, great. Aaron Judge, clearly the priority. Our projection on him is a bit lower than the industry, but it's still like probably the highest anybody's had or we've had on a hitter this year. Like everything is relative. Nearly a 13-point projection on Judge, and I manually actually bumped that a little bit just because of the year he's having. And I've talked before about a couple of guys that I think we're a little bit biased in favor of right now based on hitting metrics. Judge, I think he's just somebody I go a little bit higher on. But either way, like highest projected guy for us. The biggest risk that you kind of run with Aaron Judge is that teams just stop pitching to him and treat him like Barry Bonds, and you get 10 points or 12 points because he walks 4 times and then scores 2 or 3 times. But like you can't even do that too comfortably. You have Bellinger, you still have a good lineup. We don't have the actual lineup yet, I don't think, but probably Bellinger behind him. We did get it. So Rice behind him, followed by Goldschmidt, Dominguez. There is no Bellinger today, so that's interesting. That makes the Yankees probably actually no. Rice is 5,600, so it doesn't change too much. Yeah, but anyway, Judge looks great. Bellinger was my second highest owned Yankee. Now, obviously, he won't be. Grisham's getting 20% ownership. I'm getting to him at 5,400. The Yankees are not as expensive across the board as the Phillies were. Judge, obviously, is more expensive than anybody on the Phillies was. But for when the Phillies were in Coors, you had $6K plus on Harper, on Schwarber, on Turner. The most expensive guy other than Judge is like $5,600 Ben Rice. So still expensive, but not as expensive. Yankees look great. And it's a 12-game slate. So, they're going to be popular. You're probably going to get 30+% ownership coming into Aaron Judge. You're probably going to get 10 to 20% on everybody else. But because it's a 12-game slate, yes, they're popular, but at least you're not dealing with like half the field playing them. If this were like a 5-game slate in this spot, you're just going to have like 30+% ownership on every Yankee. And you're kind of just in like that really shitty spot of, okay, well, I don't ever want to play a 30 to 40% owned stack because it's baseball, but also like, how do they actually not do well here? So in terms of raw ownership, it's a little bit more palatable. There's plenty of ways also, the nice part of a 12-game slate. There's been so many teams offenses that we've talked about so far where it's just like, oh, well, I like them. They're 5% owned. So like you can play Yankees and then you're not going to have any trouble finding other hitters you like that are 5% owned to offset your Yankees. On the Colorado side, they are in Coors. They are going to be lower owned. I do think Clark Schmidt is a pretty good pitcher. I do think the Rockies suck at hitting, but they do have a few guys that are appealing. $4,100 Ezekiel Tovar is still pretty cheap. Hunter Goodman does give you power upside at catcher for $4,600. Jordan Beck, Ryan McMahon, both perfectly fine, as is Brenton Doyle. So sub 5% projected ownership coming into the Rockies right now. I'm not getting a lot, but I'm more in the like 5 to 10% range on Tovar, Goodman, Beck, McMahon, Doyle. Schmidt, so far this season, 139 expected ISO to lefties, 165 to righties. You take it back to last year, 131 to righties, 134 to lefties. Again, not a bad pitcher at all. Good strikeout pitcher over his career so far. Pretty good at limiting power. But it is Coors Field. It is a low-owned Rockies team. I think they're fine. Probably a little bit under-owned. Miami taking on the Angels in Los Angeles. Yusei Kikuchi for the Angels at 8,200. Sandy Alcantara for the Marlins at 7,700. 13% projected ownership coming into Alcantara. I'm getting 12%. 21% projected ownership coming in to Kikuchi at 8,200. I'm getting about 15%. So pretty much in line with the field on both of these guys. Very good matchup for Kikuchi. Very good strikeout matchup for Alcantara, albeit a park downgrade for him. Angel Stadium is good for power. But they do have the highest strikeout percentage against right-handed pitching so far this season. So far, Sandy Alcantara this year only striking out 17.8% of hitters. Stuff plus grade is good, though, at 107.7. Pitching plus grade is good enough at 100.4. So hopefully we start seeing more strikeouts from him. This is certainly a matchup where you would expect to see it. If we looking at Alcantara's splits, small sample, obviously this year. Lefties have done most of the damage power-wise with a 279 expected ISO, 414 expected WOBA, whereas righties only have a 315 expected WOBA, 117 expected ISO. The Angels don't really have the ability to run a bunch of good lefties out there because they don't have them. So you have a lineup that only has 3 left-handed hitters. Sean Newell hitting second, Moncada, who has been solid this year, hitting third, and then Luis Rengifo hitting 8th. Other than that, pretty much every six right-handed hitters overall, but the most dangerous hitters, Neto, Ward, Soler, Ohapi, these guys are all right-handed, which does play to Alcantara's strengths as well. So I do think he looks pretty good. And then Kikuchi, again, a solid matchup here against the Marlins. They just don't have a very good lineup. Kikuchi has taken a step back after tricking the Angels into paying him money, as, again, most players do. Stuff plus grade is down 9 points from last year. Pitching plus grade is still above average, but down 6.5 points. Fastball velo is down a full mile an hour. Strikeout percentage is down 6.5 points. So you have seen him do what everybody does to the Angels, but he's facing the Marlins. Certainly a nice bounce back spot for him. I think he's a perfectly solid mid-range option. For the offenses here, I am actually getting to this one a bit. Miami, I'm getting to against Kikuchi. Again, he just has not been good so far this season, and there's no guarantee that changes today. And there are some guys on Miami that I do like. I've mentioned before that Wagaman and Ramirez are guys that I do think our model is slightly biased in favor of based on their quality of contact so far this season. So I do manually discount them. That being said, I'm still getting them in like 10% of my lineups. They're projected for less than 5% ownership. Ramirez does still project as a good power hitting catcher at only 3,900 and low ownership. Wagaman has multi-position eligibility. He's only 3,300. He is batting second. No Ramirez. Ramirez is leading off and DHing. Sorry. So, they're hitting at top of the order 1-2. We didn't have this lineup when I ran stuff, but Otto Lopez, 3,800, batting third with second base eligibility. I'm getting like 12% of him. I'm getting to 14% Connor Norby, who's hitting cleanup at 3,700. The top part of this order, Ramirez, Wagaman, Lopez, Norby, is not bad. Like Lopez has stolen base upside. Ramirez has power upside. So does Norby. So I really don't mind that I'm getting to those guys. And then I'm kind of just mixing in the rest of the lineup a little bit. So far this season, Kikuchi has allowed a 231 expected ISO to righties, only a 20% strikeout percentage. And this is a park upgrade in terms of home runs for the Marlins rather as well. So, that also works. Looking at right-handed bats over the last 3 seasons, in terms of overall park factor, Angel Stadium is third in baseball. Marlins are actually ninth, which kind of surprises me. For home runs specifically, Angels are fifth in home run park factor for righties. The Marlins are 23rd. So that's where you really see that uptick, I think, in upside for these guys. And then on the Angels side, I'm getting to them as well because Alcantara is still a pretty big question mark, and it is a park downgrade for him. Now, for the Angels, it's mostly being driven by Zach Neto, who I seem to get a lot of on every single slate. But 4,900 power upside, some stolen base upside. Like I said, Alcantara has had more issues with left-handed hitters rather than right-handed hitters, but at basically no ownership, I do like the upside that Neto gives you. I'm getting the 20% of him. Other than that, I'm getting to like 5 to 10% of most of the other relevant Angels. Rengifo, Moncada, Ward, Soler, Shanwell are just kind of showing up as 5 to 10% owned plays at sub 5% ownership. So not a crazy stand there, but I am getting to them. And Taylor Ward, Ozzy just mentioned it in chat. Not only is he on fire, hitting well, even if you just pretended he was having a league, not a league average. If you pretended you were having a normal Taylor Ward season, he would still be underpriced at 3,800. I don't know how his salary is not moving, but he's 3,800. It's very slowly going up from 3,300 to 34 to 35 to now he's 38. So far this year against right-handed pitching, 176 plate appearances, 340 expected WOBA, 257 expected ISO. If you go back to last year to get a larger sample size, still a 218 expected ISO and 709 plate appearances. This isn't some breakout guy that was an average or below average hitter and now he's really good. Kyle Stowers on the Miami side, they've actually priced him up quickly. And he's somebody that went from he always projected to be good, but he had not been good in the major leagues and then starts raking. And they were relatively quick to at least get him to the mid fours. Ward, they're just treating him like he's some minor leaguer that there's no reason to believe in him when he's been an above average hitter basically his entire time in the major league. So I really don't know how that price tag works, but he is still cheap for his ceiling. And then finally, we go back to Sacramento, where this has kind of been the spot that I've been jamming instead of Coors Field for the last week or whatever, however long they've been there. Looking at the weather, it doesn't look like anything that really stands out here. But you have the Phillies going from Colorado to Sacramento. So continuing to play in good hitters parks, about a 5.5 total for the Phillies. The problem here with the Phillies is that because they're coming from Colorado, they are really expensive to not be playing in Colorado. Starting with the pitching here, though, Zach Wheeler on the mound for the Phillies. Jeffrey Springs going for the A's. Springs is 6,300, 6% owned. I'm getting 6%. He's just another guy that you throw into that bucket of cheap guys that allow you to pay for the Yankees. You're not expecting much out of him. It's a very tough matchup in this park against the Phillies. The one thing you can say about him that is positive is that he does have a good changeup, which does mitigate right-handed power. The problem is that Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber, who are probably going to be the only two lefties in this lineup, hit left-handed pitching very, very, very well, and they're facing a lefty who does not actually have a wipeout pitch to get left-handed hitters out. So I actually like those two, singling them out. But you're not going to, if you go to Springs, you're not going to him because you're confident. Actually, it looks like Jacob Lopez now. Let me double check this. Athletics recalled Lopez from AAA. He's expected to start. Okay, so Jacob Lopez, also a lefty. Also 6,300. Probably not somebody that I'm going to play at all. See if we have him in yet. Yep, there we go. Okay, so Jacob Lopez we have projected for 10 fantasy points. For context, we had Springs at 12. So, yeah, even less appealing than Springs was. Ken, I meant to mention this and I got sidetracked. Ken said teams running wild against Alcantara. I meant to mention that I saw it on the screen and I was pulling up his Fangraphs page and then forgot. I'm glad you mentioned that because we have a very high stolen base projection on Neto. That was something that I think is getting him into lineups for me. Highest stolen base projection on the slate for us is Zach Neto. Alcantara so far this season has allowed 18 stolen bases in 41 and 2/3 innings pitched. Last season, 2023, he in 184 innings allowed 17 stolen bases. So, yeah, teams running at will. You do have Fortes behind the plate, not typically the catcher, pulling his stuff up, but generally you're stealing bases off of pitching anyway. Fortes this year has allowed 24 stolen bases on 26 attempts. He's not good at controlling the running game either. So that is a big reason I'm getting so much Neto, even though I'm not getting to the Angels in particular. So I'm glad you mentioned that, Ken, that stolen base projection. And that is something I really like about our projections is instead of just looking and being like, oh, we have a high projection on Zach Neto, I don't know if I like that or not. You can see where that projection is coming from. So you can say, one, clearly he has upside when you see the home run projection and the stolen base projection. But then two, you can say, well, I don't know if I like this projection. It seems like it's really driven by stolen bases. Let me pull up Fangraphs and look at what this battery for Miami has done. And you go, holy shit, Zach Neto is going to steal every time he gets on base probably. So it's clearly backed up. And I do really like that at low ownership. So glad you mentioned that. I had meant to talk about it and then forgot after I pulled up the page. So going back to the pitching here, it is not Jeffrey Springs. It is Jacob Lopez. He was called up, I think, as I hit start on the show. So always nice when teams do that. He's started one game for the A's this year, 4 appearances. He had been in the Tampa Bay organization previously. He projects for a 22% strikeout percentage, around a mid-4s FIP. That probably also is assuming he's going to be a reliever more than a starter, so his actual projections are going to be worse. So anyway, I don't think you're going to get to Lopez. He projects worse than Springs and wasn't getting too much Springs. On the other side, tough spot in terms of the park for Wheeler, but obviously really good pitcher, works deep into games. Have him neck and neck with Sale for the highest projection on the slate, and I assume we have him, facing the most batters on the slate, basically neck and neck with Sale, going 6 innings, getting the most outs. And one thing you will notice in our projections too is that getting anybody to actually project for 6 innings is not common because our projections are Sims based and it's going to skew left because you're going to have those games where they get blown up or they get pulled early for whatever reason, they're inefficient, whatever it may be. So actually getting a 6-inning projection on somebody is high. So 15% projected ownership to Wheeler. He is 11K. I'm getting the 20%. The price tag is prohibitive. I would assume most of my Wheeler lineups are not Yankees lineups. I would be correct on that assumption. Of my Wheeler lineups, one of them has at least 2 Yankees. So, yeah, it's tough to get to the Yankees and Wheeler, obviously. But Wheeler is very good in non-Yankees lineups if you can afford him. You have plenty of cheap stacks that you can get to, whether that's Houston, whether that's the Orioles, whether it's Miami. Like there's plenty, Minnesota. There's plenty of inexpensive stacks today. Colorado, relatively cheap, that I'm sure you can pair with Wheeler if you do want to go the route of getting to better pitching. Wheeler so far this year striking out 33% of hitters. That's up about 4% from last year. His stuff plus grade is down slightly, but still 109. His pitching plus grade, though, is up 5 points, 118.4. That's one of the best in baseball. He's been excellent. So, scary park to pitch in, but very, very good pitcher. We know the A's have power as well. They did also shuffle their roster. They brought up, I'm blanking on his first name, last name Clark from the minors. He is going to be their Denzel Clark. He's going to be their everyday center fielder now. They sent JJ Bleday down. So Clark is one of the A's top prospects, but at the same time, you're getting a dude making his major league debut. He is not a top 100 prospect, at least on Fangraphs. High strikeout percentage, projects for like a 30+% strikeout percentage. So, and projects to be a well below average hitter in the majors. So having him up is a bump, I think, for Zach Wheeler as well, even though he probably will be hitting toward the bottom of the order. So probably only face him twice. But that is going to make Wheeler look a little bit better. Offensively here, it is tough, again, to get to the Phillies because of their pricing. So you're getting pretty much like 5 to 10% ownership on everybody. And the projections I used were with them facing Springs instead of Lopez. So they will project a little bit better. But 4K, Real Muto was the guy showing up the most for me and for the field at like 11% for me, 9% for the field. He is relatively cheap at catcher in a pretty good spot. The rest of the team is good if you can get to him. But Harper at 6,200, Turner at 6K, Schwarber at 6,300. When you put it in context, like you are paying more for the heart of the order on the Phillies with their 5.5 total than you are for the heart of the order on the Yankees and their 7.5 total. Obviously, from an ownership standpoint, you're going to get really good odds there. Like you're going to get like a 5 to 10 to 1 discount on Yankees bats or on Phillies bats versus Yankees bats. But in terms of projection, you can see that you are overpaying to be contrarian. So that's the issue with the Phillies, but certainly a high ceiling in this park if you can get there. And then on the A's side, I don't really think that I need to be prioritizing bats against one of the best pitchers in baseball on this slate. So to recap, again, take my exposures with a grain of salt because 2 pitchers changed from the time that I ran, or I guess technically 3 pitchers changed from the time that I ran everything, and then also ownership and everything will change. But Giolito, Sale, Wheeler, Schmidt, the pitchers I'm getting the most of. At catcher, Raleigh, Real Muto, Ramirez. First base, Peterson, Guerrero, Goldschmidt. Second base, Clement, Semien, Lopez. Semien will probably drop off, though. He's batting 9th. Lopez, LeMahieu. Third base, Norby, Barger, Moncada. Shortstop, getting to Neto, Tovar, Bichette, Volpe. Outfield, Judge, my highest owned guy overall. Was getting a lot of Bellinger. He's not in the lineup, so I'll probably get a good amount of Ben Rice at first base now. Trent Grisham, Julio Rodriguez, Dalton Varsho, Wyatt Langford, Springer. Stack-wise, Yankees, number 1. Texas, I think that changes because of their shitty lineup. Angels, that's driven by a lot of like 2-mans with Zach Neto. Toronto, I'm getting a lot of 5-mans, or at least I was. Miami, in terms of 5-mans, it's getting a lot of Yankees, Toronto, Seattle, Miami, Texas. But again, that'll fall off. Colorado. So wide open slate. The only team really getting tons of ownership is the Yankees, as you would expect. I'm tired of talking. Thank you for checking out the show. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, all that stuff. Good luck on your lineups tonight. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you back here next week.